Before we start the show, I'd like to once again extend my support for the SAG-AFTRA reunion, as I've been told the Alliance Motion Picture and Television Producers has decided to back away from continuing negotiations due to unreasonable demands being made by the actors, which is crazy. So once again, I'd like to ask that you continue your support for our fellow actors, and if you're able to make a simple donation, spread the message across social media platforms, or join them in picketing, please do so. If I know any more information on the SAG-AFTRA strike, I'll make sure to inform you as soon as I can. Until then, hang in there and keep up the good work, SAG-AFTRA. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Lone Screenplay Nominee Podcast, where we talk about films that were solely nominated for an Oscar in the writing categories. I'm your host, Matthew Anderson, and today we have Valentina Starcovich. I apologize if I butchered the last name pronunciation. Who herself is also an Oscar predictor and has also been a guest on various podcasts, some of which I've been on. Like And the Oscar Doesn't Go To, the 300 Passions podcast, and the Lone Acting Nominees. Welcome to the show, Valentina. How are you doing today?
Hi there, Matthew. Going pretty well. What about you? And I have to say that the last name was pretty well said, so I get you points for that.
Okay, I wasn't too sure. Yeah, we were talking like right before we got on the call for this. We were talking about like upcoming Oscar stuff because we hadn't talked in a while for maybe the last couple months. But yeah, no, we just had to get caught up on like what we thought was going to be like in the upcoming races and such. But yeah, that's not what we're here to talk about in the episode. But before we talk about our movie and dive into the film that you chose, I have some questions that I want to ask. I typically ask my guests, I should say. Would you care to explain to our audience what exactly it is you do for a living, per se, if you're able to say?
Well, what I do for a living, I'm an international relations graduate. So I work in diplomacy, definitely in political and economic diplomacy. And apart from that, I'm also a sort of aspiring film critic. But I actually write mostly in Spanish. So it's like I divide my time between that and that. But I think everyone is an art. Everything is an art. So diplomacy is also an art, and even more fucked up than the Oscars.
Gotcha. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I don't think you ever mentioned your actual job to me or to any of our friends like Sam or Ronaldo in the past, or maybe if you did, I wasn't there when you told us what exactly it is you do. But that's interesting. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
Um,
they sort of kind of know it. I have to admit that not even me, I know what I do for a living somehow. But yes, like I divide my time. It's like what gives me money, what gives me money. It's diplomacy. Then what I do in my free time, and mostly half of my time, it's dedicated to films and that stuff. So I actually earn money in order to continue doing something else that's not pretty much related.
Gotcha. Well, the other question I want to ask is it's always tough to ask someone what their favorite film is, so I might as well ask another question, which is, or a different question, I should say, which is, what's your favorite genre of film?
Well, that's actually, I mean, yeah, it's of course is quite overwhelming trying to put into one film like what are the universe of films that you can actually like. But I mostly always say Network, even though Network it's like my most liked film. Yet I have like a million others. But I think in the line of Network, Birdman, that kind of films that I like, I pretty much like satires. It's like I don't like a genre like it. People go like very much like okay, I like dramas and this type of drama. No, I like satires. I like something that's between a drama and a comedy, but at the same time, it's going to tell you something different. It's going to make fun about reality or about the world and how the world is colliding. So I think that's my favorite genre.
Yes, there's definitely some interesting satirical films. One of which we'll get into just in a second. But yeah, Birdman, you mentioned, that's a really good movie, and I think you and I are like one of the few who are willing to defend that movie
Yeah, definitely.
within our close circle. Because I rewatched that a couple months ago, and I'm like, yeah, this actually holds up a lot better than I was expecting. Even
It's
though
very
we're not in that like prime superhero genre that we were in when it came out, but still, it's very weird that that's yeah that holds up, and yeah, I'm like, yeah, I still really love it, and it sucks that you guys aren't able to love it as much as we are.
Exactly, I love it. I think it's a great Best Picture winner, especially of this decade, of this century. I don't care. It has so many layers that you have in order to analyze. I mean, not only for Michael Keaton's performance, that I think it's one of a lifetime, but he's also making fun. He's also being satirical about his own career. So I think it's very interesting, and also how González Iñárritu actually managed to pull out that script with other fellow Latin American writers, something that is pretty much under the identity of Americans, because it had something very intrinsic about American identity towards superheroes, towards their figures, towards celebrities. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, he's an interesting filmmaker. I hope to talk about on the podcast in full, or I talk with someone about it on a podcast in the future, because he's got a lot of films that I want to see in the future. A lot of his earlier stuff, but that's another conversation we could have another time regarding with Inarritu. So, anyways, you're not here for us to talk about Inarritu. You're not here to talk for us to hear about the upcoming awards contenders. No, you want to hear us discuss the 2016 film The Lobster, which was directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. And I find it very fitting that we are talking about this man, or this man's film, for this episode, because he has another film that's making its way during the award circuit called Poor Things. That'll be out, as of this recording, it'll be out in December, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so I find it very, very interesting that we timed it perfectly, whether it was an accident or not, that we're here to talk about his earlier film, The Lobster. So, uh, just want to give everyone a heads up. As always, this won't be a beat by beat bulletin point presentation of the film like you hear on other channels, where instead of discussing like going one by one with the acts, we're just gonna talk about it in general. We will, however, be discussing major spoilers for our episode. If you haven't seen the film yet and want to hear our full thoughts on it, it's simple. Just watch the film and come back and hear us talk about it.
Watch
With that,
Colin Farrell being fat, and then you come back.
yeah, yeah, for 2 hours. So yeah, but before we do our little discussion, always have to give the notes, production background notes on this. And I have a feeling, just like Casanova 70, I'm gonna muck up some pronunciations. So forgive me if I mispronounce some of these names. So here we go. Greek filmmaker Yorgos Lanthimos wanted to make this as The Lobster as his fifth film and third time he's collaborating with co-writer Ethemis Filippo on relationships and love being the central theme / idea for the film. Originally, Jason Clarke and Elizabeth Olsen were attached to play the leads, but had to drop out as Jason had scheduling conflicts with a 2015 film, Everest. Remember that film? and
Oh, wow.
uh,
Vanessa Kirby's just second starring in there.
I had no idea she was in that. Wow. Okay.
She's like for just seconds.
Okay, that's interesting. And Elizabeth Olsen, who also had scheduling conflicts with Avengers: Age of Ultron, which that took priority, and she had her run into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think she's going to be back for any more films. I think she,
No.
made that clear. So like, I'm done with that. So, anyways, so Jason and Elizabeth were both replaced by Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz. Filming began on March 24th, 2014, and wrapped on May 9th, 2014. The Lobster premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, weirdly enough, on May 15th, 2015, and also showed up at not just the Fantastic Fest, it also showed up at the Toronto International Film Festival, New York Film Festival, and the AFI Fest later that same year. It was also shown at Sundance the next year, so that would be 2016. It came up, where Manchester by the Sea was also premiering there too, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually, it opened around May 2016 in North American theaters. It's a bit tough to, when you get a movie like this to come out like a year before for these festivals or any kind of awards contenders, and they have their whole like limited run spiel. It's really tough to find, trying to nail down what was the exact date it came out, because even though the film will say, oh, it was, did a limited run in May 15th, they never tell you when it went nationwide unless they actually tell you. But you know
Yeah.
that's the whole thing with awards contenders. So anyway, so the film made roughly $18 million worldwide, I believe, on a budget of $4 million, estimating. It was, however, eligible for the BAFTAs in 2015 due to being released in the United Kingdom within their deadline for qualifying for the BAFTAs. And they only scored a Best British Film nod, which was beaten out by Oscar nominee that year, Brooklyn. I think it was the only BAFTA win they got, period, from there, Brooklyn.
Yeah, this was the only one, and then they went empty-handed at the Oscars. So
Yeah. So then the next year, it did get a handful of a handful of nominations that ranged from obviously an Oscar alone screenplay nomination for the original screenplay category. It also got a Golden Globe nomination for Colin Farrell in the comedy musical category, Critics' Choice nomination for original screenplay, and also an American Cinema Editors Guild nod in the comedy and musical category as well. Uh,
that's
and
curious.
yeah, and so the log line I'll give for the film, in as far as what the main premise is for this: in a dystopian near future, according to the laws of the city, single people are taken to the hotel where they're obliged to find a romantic partner in 45 days, or they're transferred into Beast and sent off into the woods. Before I usually ask my typical questions for you, I just also want to say, I don't know if you want to, you know, because of the Academy's past history, or maybe this is a good thing, or, a blessing in disguise. But I just want to say, as of this recording, we had just found out, or I did, maybe about a couple hours ago, that Colin Farrell is now officially an Academy voting member.
Yes, voting member
Um,
for the Academy. He was
yeah,
announced back in like 2 months ago, I guess,
he
and but
he
now he was actually announced that he's a member.
Yeah, they invite. Yeah, it's usually typical for the Academy to do, to where they invite like a handful of artists and craftspeople from the makeup category, the directors, actors branch, even the executives and publicist branch. I believe they recognize. And so yeah, so I'm curious to see, and there were a bunch of actors too, like Stephanie Shu is now an Academy member, and same goes with Paul Mescal, I believe.
Yeah, and
So
even a lot of people that I would actually mention to be invited, like both for fellow The Banshees of Inisherin cast members Barry Keoghan and Curry Condon. They were both actually. No, I think Barry was already a member. I don't recall him being talked, but I do remember Curry Condon, but she wasn't actually listed yet as being officially a member. But I bet she is, but just that they didn't promote it.
yeah, I know it's common for actors to be, or people to be invited, and they just say, "Nah, I'm not interested in voting for that." But hey, congratulations on your voting member status, Colin Farrell. It's just weird that it's the day they announced it is the day we're recording this episode, and I'm like, okay, that's very weird.
Polling
Weird timing.
is on our side. Maybe he's actually having a premonition of working back again with Yorgos Lanthimos. Could be his third collaboration, so who knows?
Yeah, maybe. So anyways, yeah, so I already just got so anyways, back to the movie. So I already gave you the background and the log line to the film. I want to ask, even though when I threw my threw my ring into the hat and said, "Hey Valentina, do you want to be on the show?" And you had made, I think you had said you had two films you wanted to choose, this or In Bruges. And
Rose
I think
Colin Farrell starring.
Okay. Yeah, I figured that was the reason why, because you have such a big man crush on him to begin with. But I'm curious as to if you were given the choice between the two of them, would you have wanted to, like, what would you have picked? Or would it be like a Sophie's Choice where you're like, you can't pick?
I think I could pick the Lobster. I think it's one of my favorite. I'm actually a very huge fan of Yorgos Lanthimos, especially his early films back in Hollywood. That we did this one, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Of course, the favorite that it's like the most famous one. But
Yeah.
I do like his. I do like his approach. I do like his scripts. I do love In Bruges, and I'm a huge also Martin McDonagh fan. But it's not my favorite movie of his, and it's probably my top three. In this case, could probably my top one of
Okay.
Yorgos Lanthimos, and it has two main reasons about acting. It has, of course, Colin Farrell, but also has Leah Seydoux. And I think it's a very interesting role for her. It's like she's not very much in it, but it's a very interesting role from the perspective that the approach that he has in the English language. So I find it very, very likable. I think it's a very good movie.
Out of curiosity, because I assume you had already watched this before, how did your experience this time around when you saw it compare to when you first saw it back, however, whenever you first did?
You know, I rewatched it last year, and I watched it back again for the podcast. And what happened with me is like the last time I watched it, I had a different idea about. Okay, Colin Farrell was not an Oscar nominee, and I was very shocked that he wasn't because I think he's really good in this film, and he has certainly very good performances.
Mhm.
Um, but it could be my different perspective in the sense, of course, of his acting, on the fact that he has this very lonely man performance, and he also has a very lonely man performance in The Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah,
Um, so I think it has like a very different approach in how he actually outlines very different sensibilities of their characters. And I actually think he's very mature right now, as and he was already very mature. And I think when he started collaborating with Lanthimos, he's starting like doing this very much serious man approach, not only just like, you know, like the heartthrober status, the bad boy that he had back in the 2000s. Uh, but also I was really shocked. Also, I mean, I'm always shocked about the way that Lanthimos gets his scripts, but also how he directs the performances. And I think it's very different how you manage to watch it different times and you put your eye in different actors and how he can manages like very different characters to put it into the service of the film. So that was something that I really started like paying more attention to it. You have Olivia Colman, you have Rachel Weisz, that I'm not quite passionate always about her. That's a personal matter,
uh,
but I think she's really good. It's like everything is putting out in the service, and I think the cast is outrageous. And it's like when you watch it several times, you can actually put more attention into that.
it's interesting too because I think I watched this right around the time The Favorite got nominated for 10 Oscars, and I think maybe it was like that first viewing or how whenever it was, but it was like right like leading up to the Oscars. I'm like, I find it very funny that Olivia Colman. I first off, I didn't even knew Olivia Colman as who she was until The Favorite, like a
No,
lot of
yeah,
other people, and I find it very odd that it's looking back at The Lobster. I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if like in the back of my brain I thought like just a tiny percent of it thought, wouldn't it be funny if Olivia Colman managed to win an Oscar for The Favorite, especially when she's worked with Yorgos as far back as The Lobster, and then that whole night happened and I'm like, what the fuck? What's
yeah,
going on? But you know, and the other thing too is that like Olivia Colman, you know, outside of The Lobster though, she's been in other things. I fucking love Hot Fuzz. That's one of my favorite comedies of all time. Probably my favorite comedy I've seen so far. And then Rachel Weisz, who's a really solid actress. Ben Whishaw can hold his own, especially in Women Talking. Even John C. Riley had like a really good
Chelsea
year
Riley had
in
his momentum. It's like it's a
yeah.
very very small role, but still, it's like you really understand why he's there and how he. I mean, what he's doing in there. It's pretty interesting, and the sort of game that he has with Ben Wishaw, that you don't know if he hates him or whatever it is, but at the
Mhm.
same time they're all the same pathetic people. It's very 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 funny.
Yeah, and even Colin Farrell, which you already brought up, he is an actor that I'm so glad has decided to. I don't know if it was his agent or he had, you know, put this purpose onto himself and is like, I need to be a character actor,
Yeah.
and I can't stop doing these like pretty boy roles. You know, like he was like for I don't know if it was forced upon him. You know, like doing Alexander, or doing all these like other really shitty movies from the 2000s. Because I think for a while Hollywood pegged him as like the pretty boy actor, and it's like, no,
And the
you,
bad boy, he has like that bad boy status, and that's
yeah,
it. Like you always knew. I think that what happened to me is like mostly when, I mean, he did Miami Vice, and he's very
yep.
well known in here in Uruguay because he went filming here, and everyone was like, he's a good actor, but he's never gonna get anything more like that. I mean, there were newspapers talking about that because of his behavior.
Yeah,
he was never like bad behaved, but he had that status of a bad boy that I don't give a fuck for saying it
yeah,
about what I'm doing, about my career and that stuff, because I'm always gonna be somehow like not even a blockbuster actor, but just a big budget actor. And he's starting to like switching back like in 2000, yeah, 2010. Well, maybe the In Bruges momentum when he won the Golden Glove and that, and
yeah.
you were like, okay, he really can act.
Yeah, and the other thing too about it is that I first off, when this came out, The Lobster and Killing of the Sacred Deer, I hadn't seen these movies back when they came out in theaters. I'd only heard about them in passing, and I think it was around the time, it might have been last year, where I started paying attention to Colin Farrell as like a legit dramatic actor, because
Hmm.
he's done drama before, like Phone Booth. It's not a great dramatic film, but it definitely showed his acting chops to begin with, and it showed this guy had potential. And
Yeah,
then he had the Batman. And then when I saw In Bruges for the first time last year, actually, it was around the time the Banshees came out. And I thought, just based on his performance in Bruges and him reteaming with Martin McDonagh, I just assume, and with the reactions I'm hearing out of Banshees, I'm like, yeah,
hmm,
I could definitely buy Colin Farrell finally getting an Oscar nomination, which he was rightly due, by the way,
yeah.
because he is, even in this film, like you said, he's really good. He is playing that sort of like, you know, I guess like yeah, depressed kind of character, but it's not the same from what he's done with Banshees. Like it's completely different
It's
to begin
completely
with.
different. I mean, not only because this is a dystopian reality, and Banshees
Yeah.
was more linked to a very, very lonely momentum of life, and also very tragic moment for the civil war in Ireland, and he was living in an island. In an island, so, uh, but also because he actually manages to very, he has like very different. You don't need to see him yelling or
Mm.
anything. He just can't play the depressed or at the same time the lonely or at the same time the dumb character like he somehow does in Bruges. And he can really like he has that thing that he's very like lonely also in the way that he acts, but he always connects with the whole environment and gives a very powerful performance. And I think ever since when he did in Bruges, like he he realized he had that thing about doing satiricals because it's very satirical what he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as the Lobster itself, though, I thought it was decent. There's a lot of entertaining moments in the film. In terms of the ideas on paper, I think the first act is probably the strongest because
Yes.
I think that to me is an interesting setup to begin with. And it was odd but interesting to how Yorgos would use narration. From Rachel Weisz's point, it would use her narration, and it's not until later on we find out that these are all the notes that David, who is played by Colin Farrell, is writing down all the notes, from
Hmm.
his day to day experience, living at the hotel, then him leaving the hotel and going living out in the woods with the loners. And I thought that was an interesting idea that he uses in the film. And at times it did remind me a little bit of what Ruben Ostlund was trying to do with Triangle of Sadness, not just in terms of the class, but also with how absurd this whole thing can be.
Yes.
And it's very much like what Ruben Ostlund was trying to do for Triangle of Sadness. It is very much a kind of like a slow burn, almost like you have to sort of wait it out a bit. And that was kind of like Triangle of Sadness for me. It did kind of I was around the halfway mark. I was like, okay, where are we going with this? Like, I feel like we kind of pointed out to most of what I feel this premise could do within like a 90-minute movie, but at 2 hours, I was like, okay, I'm a little bit irritated. I still think there's some really good scenes in it, and there were some moments where I was kind of smirking at some of the stuff, but um, I guess what I'm trying to say is I respect the movie a lot,
Hmm.
but I'm not falling in love with it like you or many other critics are. But I totally understand why a lot of people would enjoy this. And the other thing too is that I think part of the reason is why I was a little bit let down by it was I love The Favorite so much. It was one of my
Hmm.
favorite films of that. Well, no pun intended. It was one of my favorite films of 2018, and I guess I was kind of hoping that the experience I got out of The Favorite would be on point with the Lobster, but obviously they're completely different movies.
Yeah, but also the thing with the favorite, I pretty much enjoy both films. I think The Lobster is my favorite of Lanthimos, like I mentioned before. Something I'm not that passionate with The Call of a Sacred Deer, even though
Okay.
it has two very strong performances, Farrell and Kyogan,
Hmm.
which I mean they're really good. But my thing is that with the favorite, for example, you got three very strong performances, and either you can like, for example, for me Stone is the best one out of there, but you can actually like, you can't like Emma Stone performance in the favorite without liking the other two, without liking
Yeah,
Rachel Weisz and um
Olivia Colman.
Olivia Colman. But the thing is that in The Lobster you have a very powerful performance by Colin Farrell, that it's very good. It's not very strong in the sense because the character is not its strong itself. The character is telling you a story that is pretty much devastating. I mean, his reality is devastating, and the whole course of the story is actually getting him into there. And then the other characters that are surrounding him are not very much strong, and then they're not very even. They're really supporting because even Weisz, that has much more of a momentum or anything in the sense that she's the narrator, she's a character that somehow points turns totally the point of the perspective of the movie, but still it's like something is missing in that sense if you want a strong acting. And at the same time, it's like I do love the construction of how they introduce you the facts. I think that's something that always happens with Yorgos Lanthimos. It's like you never fully understand what's happening until like you are halfway through the film. And in this case, it's the same. It's like you see him with his dog, you see him getting into a hotel, you see him telling the story about how you consider yourself, you're gay, straight, whatever, blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
But you don't fully understand till then you start seeing how they got to get the relationships and that stuff, and then you have like a very big momentum how you how Olivia Colman's character that's pretty much strange and pretty much like very outrageous character that totally comes out of the blue. uh so it's like, okay, I can actually understand why people do not love the film or would actually say, okay, where do I concentrate on it? But still, it's like for me, everything works perfectly except the final. I think that over the ending is like pretty much rushed, uh,
Yeah.
but it's very good resoluted. But
The
something
one.
happens to me with Triangle of Sadness, and the ending
Mhm.
is like everything's going pretty well. In the ending, it's like, ah, you just messed it,
Yeah, I the one thing I did like about when Colin Farrell, or I think is yeah, David, I think it is,
David.
when he goes in to get checked into the hotel and he talks with the receptionist, I like how they never show her face
No.
until after he signs the paperwork to say, "Okay, I'm willing to, be a part of, I'm like, here's the paperwork, all the, I've confirmed my sexuality." So I thought that was an interesting choice to do. And the one comment I did make though was when he was resting in bed for like taking a little nap in his bed, all of a sudden like Olivia Colman and all the like butlers or workers
Yes.
come in with the little like belt. I'm thinking to myself, like, has like does anyone not like knock like, hey, do you have clothes on so I don't walk in on you naked or anything?
No,
um
yeah. And
you
also
know
Olivia Colman when she's like somehow doing the singing, that it's like it's so bad. It's like you feel so uncomfortable in those scenes where she's singing and she's singing,
I,
like just
yeah,
standing up with the microphone looking at nowhere, and then she starts singing out of okay, and then she just stops and it's like, what am I watching? It's like it's totally delusional. Of course it's the topic of the film, but it's like you watch and I was like, what?
yeah. I was also wondering too if Olivia Colman had ever like sang before in her life, and I didn't want to disrespect her or anything, but I was just curious as like if she took any lessons, or was this like an intentional choice to be like, this is how I want you to sing.
Yeah,
um
exactly. And it's like the hair, everything. She looks like Milhouse, the Simpsons episode where they're actually getting wigs, and Milhouse comes up with a very big
oh
black
god.
wig. She looks exactly like that. It's like
Yeah.
I cannot take anything serious. But that's something out of Olivia Colman. She's pretty much a scene stealer. Whatever she's doing, she just steals it. She has something.
Yeah, yeah, no, and she's apparently she can make some other films that are just very so. It'd be like, some of the best things about it.
She's really good. And when
Yeah,
she
but
does comedy, that type of comedy, she's really good. She also has a sketch that she's talking about a computer for girls, and she has the same way. It's like you see her, and it's like, what is this woman doing?
mhm. Yeah, she's definitely a talented actress, and like I said, I'm shocked that it took us this long to finally
Yeah,
recognize her for what she is, even though she's been in the industry for at least since 2007 or six,
yeah.
maybe.
I mean, I do
Um,
remember there's a conversation that she did back in the National Theater, I guess, was in 2021. And she was mentioning that she got into drama school like in the early 2000s, but that she has been acting for ages. And it's like, but no, where were you? Like, nobody
yeah,
was seeing you.
yeah. Um, yeah, no, yeah, no, she like and like always, she's pretty good in this. I'm trying to think if there's while I'm going through my notes, was there anything of interest, any scene in particular throughout the film that you thought that you wanted to bring up for the conversation?
I think that you mentioned it, but the whole sexuality thing when he was like, it was a very like it was one man show because you only see Colin Farrell and they start asking questions and it'll be like, how could you define your sexuality? And he goes like, I prefer women, and then he makes a pause and it's like, oh, I had a homosexual activity back in college, so is there
Mhm.
any bisexual? And I remember the answer is like, no, that option was discontinued. It's like, what?
Yeah,
It's so absurd how, and he's just like, he passes back and it's like, oh, and it's like, how does that even is a reality? I mean, of course, it's a dystopian thing.
yeah,
Nothing makes sense at it, but it's like he goes like, oh, he doesn't have like anything in particular opinion, and that's the same reaction that he has when the woman just throws out the window and is
yep,
screaming in pain, and he's like, oh, can't she stop screaming? Like it's so absurd, and you start seeing the layers of his character. That
yeah.
somehow it's somehow well layered, but at the same time it's telling you everything about it.
Yeah, the other thing I thought that was interesting about the biscuit lady who committed suicide or attempted to commit suicide was yeah, because I'm pretty sure she's dead. There's
Yeah,
no
she's
way.
dead,
Yeah,
definitely.
because I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we saw blood on the concrete. But
She was like
anyways,
another thing.
um, yeah, it was interesting how she would bring up like if I were to if it was like if during my last few days or whatever, I probably would have jumped out of the floor or whatever. And I'm like looking back and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess she's really desperate to like want to talk to someone. uh but also I could see that as a way of like again, like it's very much shows like, okay, being this talkative, turns people off. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm not interested in wanting to talk with you. Even Colin Farrell's character was like, I'm looking out the window, like not
Yeah,
even acknowledging her. And yeah, no, I just thought that was an interesting aspect to play into this whole dystopian world. Like, what would happen, if that were the case? And even with the whole John C. Riley, being caught masturbating to a picture of a woman on the horse, like you shouldn't have done that because you realize the horse could have been someone as lonely and despicable as you could. I
and
thought
they
that
get
was
the
interesting.
toaster. Like
Yeah,
this is the kind of pain that you're inflicting to this person, and everyone was like, it was like you get to see that scene like you only see him, of course, screaming in pain, and people just doing nothing, having no reaction. Like this, I'm sorry, this is what it has to do, and that's it. Because it's
yeah,
not like when Joan of Arc was actually burned in the whole in the middle of a of a whole mass of people. It's like everyone is actually surrounding, watching, but nobody has a reaction. Like the normal thing is not having a reaction,
yeah,
and
yeah. No,
you're like,
that
this is so pathetic, but at the
yeah.
same time, it's so interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up though. The other thing I did like, the other thing I thought was interesting was I like how the Ben Whishaw character,
Yeah,
him wanting to be with this girl who has a like constant nosebleed, and it's kind of implied that their relationship isn't really steady because Olivia Colman brings up when they're together, they're like, if all doesn't go well and you guys can't solve your problems, then we'll just give you a child, as a way of
yeah.
like trying to cope together. And I find it very ironic. So two things I noticed. One, I find it very ironic that Ben Whishaw was willing to get nosebleeds, and even Colin Farrell was realizing like, yeah, this isn't a good idea to do something like this all the time just to be with someone you love. You should just love them for who they are.
Yes.
And by the end of the film, it's left very ambiguous, but we don't know if David is willing to make himself blind
Yes.
from because Rachel Weisz's character was also blind after having
The sort
her
of
and
surgery that she
yeah
gets into.
with the whole surgery. And I find it very ironic, like, hypocrite much, especially when David goes to Ben Wishaw's boat and he's like, yeah, you realize like this guy's been faking
The nose
bleeding
bleeding.
nosebleeds because he wants to be with you. And I'm like, yeah,
But that's
very yeah.
that's how ironic it also like tells you how ironic it's with real life. Like when you try to impress someone and you're so desperate for
Mhm.
that, and you try to, okay, this person likes Mission Impossible films, and you never watch it or you never care about it, and then you just go away to watch a Mission Impossible film in order to have something to talk about.
Mhm.
And in this case, it's the same. And how David actually criticizes that, and in the ending, he does the exact same thing in order to be just equal to Rachel Weisz's character. It's like you say, okay, this is delusional, but at the same time, then you got to realize, like, okay, maybe it's not delusional. Maybe this is the most real thing that you're doing.
And the other thing too about it is that when he makes the quote unquote decision with whether or not he wants to,
Hmm.
make himself blind, he's not really forced by society to do that. It's
Yeah.
just more of like his own decision making. Whereas, excuse me, the hotel, they're implementing this idea of you have to be with a partner within 45 days or you turn into an animal sort
Hmm.
of thing, and you're sent off into the woods. But no, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. The other thing I was going to bring up also was when Ben Whishaw slammed his nose against the desk. I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but as someone who's had their nose broken and had to get surgery on it, it is fucking it is just
That is painful.
yeah, it's painful. And thankfully I was put under for the surgery, but still, Jesus. Um yeah.
Yeah. Memory recall. But yeah, but also Ben Wishaw's character is like the most relatable one, because it's like he's the most basic one. When he got like, why could you want to be a lobster? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna be burned into a hot boiling, and it's like water, and it's like, yeah, he's right about everything he's telling. Like
And
he
he's in
he
a
was
hot tub too later on when he's trying to get that girl. Yeah, that's interesting.
it's like he's like one in Spanish we would say, like, do what I say, not what I do. But
Mhm.
it's the same thing, because he was actually always criticizing everything, but at the same time he ends up doing it.
I also thought it was very funny when they were at the hotel. John C. Riley said to Colin Farrell and Ben Whishaw, they said, "I want to be a parrot. I want to be turned into a parrot." And then Ben Whishaw points out, "You realize that if you become a parrot, you're still gonna have a lisp in your voice, right? Like,
Yes, because he
there's
was
no
like,
way you can get rid of that."
yeah, we could be together and we would do talking if you all decide to be a
Yeah,
parrot. And he was like, what?
yeah.
Why?
So I
It
thought,
was like, you need to understand that if you choose an animal, you have to choose an animal not because you like it, just because it has some sense. And then what comes when Olivia Colman first says, "Oh, that's an excellent choice, being a lobster, because the world is full of dogs because everyone wants to be a dog."
yeah.
And it's like, what? It's like I don't have a dog, I have a cat, but at the same time, it's like I start watching my cat like, you're real. It's like it makes you realize a lot of things, like, oh, that's a very interesting thing, because you always, when you get into psychological tests or whatever, someone always tells you, what animal would you like to be? I think we go like dog, a cat, a lion, or not. But it's like a lobster. And when she was like, that's what the world is full of dogs. Also very strange that Colin Farrell's character has a dog that it's his brother, and it's the same. Somehow the dog is very very similar to the dog that Brendan Gleeson's character has in The Banshees of Inisherin. It's like he has a sort of connection with dogs, or what?
Huh. I didn't even realize that.
It
I
looks
mean,
pretty much similar.
yeah, it's been over almost a year, I want to say, since I last saw Banshees. But yeah, I remember there was a dog, and I just didn't remember what breed it was. But that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, he's
um,
sort of a border collie. Yeah, in both of them.
yeah. It was a really, like, in terms of acting, it was a really good scene of Colin Farrell finding out about his brother getting killed by the strict woman, and
Yes.
then it's revealed like she had blood on her leg, and she's just trying to test him to see if he's really faking their relationship or not.
And how
And
raw that scene is, because she comes out and says, "I killed your brother,"
mhm,
and then you come to realize that his brother was a dog.
yeah,
And you get like, oh, pause, and then you saw the dog just like bleeding to death in the bathroom, and you're like, and that's something very raw about every single, especially the early Yorgos Lanthimos films. It's like he doesn't. Okay, this is what I'm showing you. This is the reality. This is the everything. I mean, I think the only film, and I've seen several of him, so Doctors also has like very raw scenes, but it's like the only one that you don't see that much is in The Favorite, but still I do remember that first scene of Emma Stone when she just puts out her face in the grass, and it's like she just, it's like everything has something very raw about it. Or when Rachel Weisz shoots and the blood comes out into her face, into Emma Stone's face.
yeah. The other thing too about it was, wasn't there a rabbit? Yeah, there was a rabbit with or a hare with the favorite, and also with this, there's a
Yes.
rabbit too. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think it even gets the rabbit into the poster of The Favorite. I don't
I
recall there's something
think
over
so.
Emma Stone, I guess, in the
Yeah.
poster. The
Huh.
one that they're three together. I think I've seen that.
Interesting. Um, I'm just scrolling through the rest of my
We
notes.
know that Yorgos Lanthimos has a thing with animals. Yeah, she has a rabbit.
Interesting. Yeah, Yorgos Lanthimos and Jordan Peele have this weird obsession with putting animals either in their posters or movies or both.
Or in the
Um,
names, Killing of a Sacred Deer,
yep,
Lobster, and in The Favorite you have not one but three rabbits. You
yep,
have Emma Stone has one, Rachel Weisz that is sitting in the lap of Olivia Colman has one, and then the other one is like putting in the middle between Rachel Weisz and Olivia Colman. So we say the trilogy of rabbit, lobster, and deer.
interesting. The
And
other
then
thing
you
I
have
did,
Bluetooth, so it's like something pretty much related to animals.
yeah, I'd be curious to see what Poor Things has animal wise. One thing we didn't talk about was Ben Wishaw's story about his mother, about the lone wolf, and about how he would go in, like he's like, I don't know which wolf it was, so I ended up giving all of them like a piece of raw meat each
One of
individually,
them.
and
That
then all of them come in at me, and the only two that weren't, I assume one of them was my mother, and I thought that's a really funny story.
was
Like,
like
wow, this
so
is really funny.
that, and then in the ending that you see the fact that they get Leah Sedux's character to be somehow beaten to death by animals by
Yeah,
somehow, so it's like it has something sort of a resolution that has everything is connected to it.
yeah, that was
I don't even know if that's intentional or not. I guess that some of the things probably are intentional, but even if they're not, it's like they make you think a lot about it.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, I respect Yorgos Lanthimos for at least making an attempt
He's
to
insane.
make us try to think about this, because like I said, I'm not clearly in love with it as you are, but there was still a lot about it to admire for sure. Yeah, and I just thought it was a really, just again, a well crafted film, interesting idea, and interesting premise. The one thing I also did like about it was that they didn't beat the whole we're on the run scenario, where towards the end, the two characters are on the run from the hotel and really from the police and society in general. And we've seen that kind of trope done even in something like Brazil,
Yeah.
or Blade Runner, I guess, where it's like, we're being hunted by, or whatever it is, all these like science fiction dystopian world building movies,
Yeah, and
I'm
also
sure.
how
So
they change you from the hotel and how the he somehow escapes and gets into the loners. I think that part is quite forced, even though it's like when you get to realize it's like, okay, there's a parallel world
mhm.
that somehow you got Olivia Colman in one hand and then you had Leah Sedux in the other. And in my mind would be like, what do I prefer? Olivia Colman telling me to get a couple or Leah Sedux telling me to not have one?
Yeah.
So I like the contrast, yet I think that the way somehow it's resoluted, it's kind of forced. And then you just somehow get introduced to Rachel Weisz, and it's like, okay, I got a little bit, I'm gonna say lost in my case, because I watched it several times and I still enjoy it. But I know some people that were like, okay, I really got lost. I really got like out of all my perspective. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. I get what people would be like, I wouldn't say disappointed, but it's like, yeah, maybe their attention just coming out.
Yeah, I just, like I said, once they did that whole transition from the hotel to the woods, I thought some of the stuff with the woods isn't as interesting as the hotel. Although I will say there was one joke I thought was admittedly funny when Leia Sadu, I think it was Leia Sadu, told Colin Farrell's characters to like, we're not allowed to dance together. We have to dance alone, which is why we listen to electronic music. And I thought that's hilarious.
Yeah. Or
So
or even when they were just like kissing each other and she was like, don't do this in front of my father, like what are you
yeah,
doing? It was that was like really really good. I think even though I love Leah Seydoux and I think she's pretty good in it, I think the character is like, you have so many little characters well crafted. Even Olivia Colman's character, that somehow it's the parallel with Leah Seydoux's character.
yeah.
Um, and even the actresses of that they were playing the love interest, the nosebleeding girl, the other one who was insane, that I have no idea who they are. They are
Mhm.
so well crafted that when you get into Leah Seydoux's character, it's like I think something is missing. Something is like I need more. It's like you got a lot of text, you got sort of a lot of screenplay at some point, but I don't get to see the development. I don't know if it is because you have the strong performance of Colin Farrell and just Colin Farrell trying to put all things together. Then you have the introduction of Rachel Weisz, but just that there was something missing. And I really don't like to say it because I think, again, I think it's a really good performance by Leah Seydoux, but yet it's like, something's missing. I don't know.
I wonder if it's because most of the film is set through most of it, I should say, air quotes, is set through David's eyes, is why we don't
Mm,
get much development from everyone else. With the exception of the scene, I think the only major scene where he's not in the movie, obviously, or actually, come to think of it, it's either from David's point of view or
mm.
from Rachel Weisz's point of
Rachel
view.
Weisz.
Because I just realized, yeah, there was also that other scene where Rachel Weisz is blind and she assumes that she killed Leia Sadu, but in reality, it's the maid who was like a
Mm.
double agent, so to speak. And I wonder if that double agent was dispatched because she was the one that made the arrangement with Leia Sadu of like, hey, I got someone
Mm.
who I want to bring on, into your world, and now that she's no longer in that hotel world, it's like, okay, I have no use for you anymore, and therefore you're just a pawn in a chess game. That's all. Um,
Yeah, but now that you mentioned the perspective thing, it's like, yeah, it's really very driven over David's shoulders. So I think I didn't actually search or anything, but he has like a lot of screen time. I mean, it's not a very long movie, it's not even 2 hours long, but he's like in almost every scene. So it's like that's a very huge development of the character because once again, it's not a strong character in the sense that he's lonely. He doesn't have anything attractive surrounding him, surrounding his personality, surrounding his reality. But at the same time, it's so powerful how he manages to be everywhere and just telling you the whole thing on over his eyes.
gotcha.
You
Um,
don't have like you say, you don't have the development of anyone. Maybe in some point Rachel Weisz, and maybe I would say Leah Seydoux, that you can actually understand like the different thing. But still, it's like it's not profound. It's not that you don't have it into depth.
hmm, interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have personally on this movie before we get into the awards like section of the episode. But I'm yeah, no, like I said, just I stated my point about the movie as a whole. I thought it was interesting, had some cool concepts, really good performances from especially from Colin Farrell, who's really good in the movie. Um, Yeah, I
He
don't
could have
really have much
scored a
else I
Best
could say.
Actor nomination, to be honest.
I'm
But I
sorry.
think he could have scored a Best Actor nomination. I'm actually anticipating to the whole award thing. But I mean, he's really good, or even a Cannes award.
Did he? Oh no, he didn't win the Cannes Award,
No,
did
he
he?
didn't win anything.
Okay.
Nobody gives award to Colin Farrell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did sweep the critics groups for Banshees of Inisherin, but
Yeah, but then he was
yeah.
just. I mean, he got the Volpe. That of course is like the a very bad sign for someone to win the Volpe Cup. But then he was somehow eaten up because of course the Best Actor category got really competitive with Austin Butler and Brendan Fraser, but also because everyone was actually ended up watching Kurikanen.
Yeah, and for the record, when we mean by the Volpe Cup curse, we don't mean by that we have a curse for like their careers or anything. It's just a curse in terms of like their chances of winning an Oscar for this performance are very unlikely.
Yeah,
Um, so
I think that with the Can, yeah, Can it's like very different thing because of the type of people that they award. Because, I mean, he didn't win Can for this one. He never won Can actually, but it's like the last time someone won Can and the Oscar was Jean Dujardin, I guess, for The Artist. Then I do remember Tony Banderas was nominated for, didn't win. So I would say everything is a curse. So Colin Farrell, don't get your movies into film festivals, please.
maybe go to TIFF. You might get a tribute prize and win the
Hmm.
Oscar.
Yeah, just like Jessica Chastain for The Time of the Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Or Brendan Fraser did the last year for The Whale, and
Mhm.
um,
Colin
yeah.
Farrell, be friends with Jessica Chastain. Just don't do another movie with her because that's also a fail.
What movie is that?
Ava? That's
Wait, what
bad.
movie?
Ava.
I've never heard of this. This is the
Oh
first.
god, just don't watch it. It's very, very bad. It's just like very, very red hair Jessica Chastain looking like Jessica Rabbit. It's from the same director of The
Uh,
Help.
oh yeah, I keep forgetting this
He
did
barely appears
exist.
in it. And they also did Miss Julie, the Miss Julie version of August Strindberg play that it was made in 2012, I guess, by Lee Bullman. That was
Okay,
just such a flop. So yeah, be friends with her, just don't do a movie with her.
interesting.
Produce a film with her. Maybe that.
Keep making more like weird art house performances like with this, and Banshees of Inisherin was a bit more mainstream, but yeah, like Martin McDonagh, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason why he's so good in Banshees and in Bruges, and he's really good in this too. I don't want to take any credit away, take any
No, he's a
shit for
very
this.
good. What I think is like he works really good with other actors that are somehow big names or potential big names surrounding or surrounding him, but at the same time, like they're not the lead ones. Because in here, I mean, you have Olivia Colman that at the time maybe she was not that much of a name, but Leah Seydoux was already somehow important. Rachel Weisz was already an Oscar winner. Ben Whishaw and John C. Reilly are also big names. Banshees of Inisherin, Brandon Gleeson, he works terrifically with him, like
Mhm.
best in partner. Barry Keoghan is the second time he worked with him. And Kirk Condon, actually, even though we don't know that, but they know each other from like ages. So it's like
Yeah.
he's really good working with actors. Like he's not, even if he's a scene stealer, he steals the scene because he knows how to work with the other one.
Yeah, it's a typical dynamic that you need to have with your actors, and it very much is like a game of tennis a lot of
Yes.
times. But yeah, so yeah, any final thoughts on the movie itself for The Lobster before we get officially into the awards conversation for the Lobster itself?
No, I think it's we actually managed to talk about everything. Especially
Okay,
like I think Colin looks really good in it. He's not a hair robber, but he looks kind of cute. I don't know why.
with the porn mustache and like the belly gut.
The belly
Um,
and the face that he just wants to get a burger immediately and just get out of there.
yeah,
He
yeah.
also looks very burnt out for moments. I actually tweeted that yesterday. He looks like a millennial with burnout all the time.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of does. As far as the award chances for The Lobster, first question I always have to ask for everyone: did you think this was a worthy nomination for original screenplay,
Yeah.
and would you have nominated this for other categories?
Yes, definitely. I mean, knowing that the movie, as you mentioned, had their release in order to get into the Academy Awards back in the Oscars of 2017 that awarded films in 2016, and it
Yeah,
lost out against Manchester by the Sea, which I think is one of the such a brilliant screenplay. Even if it could have won, the chances were pretty odd, knowing that it only had one Academy Award nomination.
yeah,
But I think it's a very much worthy uh, nomination in
nomination.
my
Yeah,
thing. I think if they had the year before, maybe it could be better into a shot of winning uh, because of the winner at that time. But I think yes, I could have given a Best Actor nomination for Colin Farrell. It'd be much deserving. I think it was a pretty good category. I have to say. I mean, Casey Affleck is probably one of the greatest Best Actor wins of the last decade or the century, for saying it. Uh, but I could kept checking out, I don't know, Andrew Garfield for Hawkshire Ridge and getting Colin Farrell easily. Then for others, I think I could kept giving a Best Supporting Actress nomination to Leah Seydoux. The category was fine, I guess. Back in the time, I was actually reviewing it, but I really liked, as I'm telling you, I think that she works with the material she has. I think that for moments the screenplay benefits her a lot, for moments not, but I think it's a very showy character for her, especially knowing that her career in France, I mean, she's pretty well nominated back in France, never won anything, and also she's pretty much well known for being very much a sexual actress, in the sense that she's pretty sensual, she's a pretty good looking actress, and she always explodes that. And in here it's totally different. She barely has makeup. She's did I think she I mean, it's not her language. She's speaking in English, she's French, she has a lot of accent, and I think she's doing a terrific job.
yeah. No comment on Leia Sadu because I know my folks are gonna be listening to this, and yeah, no, that's all. So, anyways, yeah. So
I don't
Colin
think it's
Farrell.
anything. But also, best, I think cinematography has a really good cinematography for me.
I'm looking through the lineup now. What was that for cinematography? Ooh,
Probably
okay, yeah,
level.
that's really tough because I'm looking at cinematography right now. You had a Arrival, La La Land, who was our winner, Lion and Moonlight were all Best Picture nominees, and Silence with Martin Scorsese's film.
Yeah, that it's a very good cinematography. Um, but I could totally take an out Lion. It's like I
Yeah,
enjoy Lion, but not much type of movie.
I
If I
mean
had
Greg
to
Fra-
choose between Lion and
yeah, and Greg Fraser, he's done better work
yes,
past this because he did the Batman, which he should have got nominated for that. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, I thought that there was a lot of technical work involved that was great.
no, but he
And
did also Zero Dark 30, which is a
yep,
really good cinematography.
and
Uh,
he also shot Dune Part One and Part Two.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess it's just one of those cases where it's like I wonder if the Lobster was a bit too small, like 20th Century Women, which I've already covered that episode before. If anyone wants to check it out after the episode. But yeah, I wonder if just like 20th Century Women, the Lobster was just too small of a movie. And as far as the lead actor lineup goes, I just think it was just those five. And even though, yeah, Andrew Garfield was good in Hacksaw, maybe not the best of the lineup. I still think he was going to get in regardless just because he was playing a historical figure. He's in a best picture contender, even though it only premiered at Venice. And as much as we want to shit on Mel Gibson, and honestly, he
He's
deserves
a good
some of that.
director, especially in epic kind of film.
He is, and that was also, I remember that was the year that a lot of people were very much in the camp of, even though Mel Gibson's a piece of shit, we have to recognize him for his talents because admittedly he did a good war film,
Yeah,
you know. So we,
separate the art from the artist and
yeah,
blah
and
blah.
I think even too at the time voters were very much along the lines of like, yeah, say what you want about Mel Gibson, but he could direct a fucking good movie.
Yeah, but
Um,
also Andrew Garfield was, I mean, in Silence, and everybody was thinking that movie is gonna be major thing or anything.
yeah,
So I totally understand his nomination. He was in two pretty great films. I think in Silence he was probably supporting actor. He was campaigning in supporting actor. I don't remember Liam Neeson was in lead or something
I
between,
I
or
think
was,
Liam Neeson was campaign for lead for Silence, and
yeah,
Garfield was a lead, but they pushed more, and it was different studios, obviously, but I think they
yeah.
pushed more for Hacksaw because
But
that
I could
was
actually
seen more.
understand why he could end up getting a nomination, knowing that he had two strong performances back in the same year.
Well,
But as if it were for me, I could have preferred. I mean, it's undisclosable that, of course, Casey Affleck was somehow the best. I'm not quite passionate, and I'm sorry what I'm gonna say about Denzel Washington in Fences.
okay.
Uh, to be honest. So, but yeah, if I had to choose between, and also, I mean, Ryan Gosling, of course, he was gonna get nominated for La La Land, and I think
Yeah,
it's a bit,
it was the most talkative movie of the year, and it's
yeah,
I assume Oppenheimer is probably going to be that La La Land thing where it's just going to get into various categories. Hell, it might even win most of the Oscars this upcoming
except
year, but
for
we'll see.
Best Actor.
Yes, we talked about that off air. We'll continue that off air.
We don't
But
talk about anything except for
but
Bradley Cooper.
yeah,
It's
but
like,
one of us has to realistically be like, maybe someone else, but yeah, we'll keep that conversation to the sides. But yeah, as far as I did want to point out though with Garfield, I'm not sure if I mentioned this also when I was talking
but
about
you
with
got
Twin
Viggo
Century.
Mortensen for Captain Fantastic, and he's a lone acting nominee. So I could have seen him taken out and getting Colin Farrell, but he was a previous nominee. Colin Farrell
Yeah.
didn't get that strong, and also the fact that what you mentioned that it didn't have a wide release back in the year that the movie was somehow released in Cannes. So I think that's something that probably went against it.
Well, and the other thing about Captain Fantastic is that it was well liked by the actors branch,
Hmm.
and it even got the Screen Actors Guild cast ensemble nomination as
Yes.
well, which very much I think solidified Viggo Mortensen's slot at the Oscars. Like he was going to get in, I think, because of that ensemble nomination, and he might have gotten in at other places. I think BAFTA he got in. That's right.
Yeah.
Actually, I think all the lead actor boys got in at BAFTA except
Hmm.
for Denzel Washington because they hate
Yeah.
Denzel for some reason. Um, and the one thing I did want to bring up with Garfield, which I think I might have mentioned on my 20th Century Women episode in the past, I cannot remember. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. Garfield that year also seemed very much like it seemed like what would eventually happen with Tick Tick Boom, or
Hmm.
even with Patricia Clarkson for the year that she got in for Pieces of April, where it's like we have an actor who's got a collection of really solid performances in one year, and we all got to pool our votes into that one performance, otherwise they may get shut out.
Hmm.
And it happens every year with all these performances. I think even Ruth Nega was the same thing that year with Loving, where she was like the
Yes.
lone actress nominee. But yeah, no, regardless though, yeah, Colin Farrell, I'm surprised it took him this long to finally
Yeah.
get an Oscar nomination when he should have a couple on his belt. Hell, I definitely would have nominated him for In Bruges for sure. I think he's that good in it, but I
Yes.
I still stand by that Banshees of Inisherin is his best performance, even though he was beaten out by Brendan Fraser, who I'm personally okay with him winning that Oscar. I know a lot of people are not a fan of The
Mm,
Whale, and I get it totally. But I'm fine with Fraser winning that, mostly because I'm not that passionate about the category. But at the same time, I thought Fraser did a good enough job to where it's like, okay, if this Oscar win leads him to leads him to better roles and hopefully more
oh,
challenging roles. He's in Killers of the Flower Moon as well.
yeah. What
So
happens to me is that with this year's category, of course, my favorite was Colin. Is that if I have to talk about the performances, for me, The Whale is probably the last of the lineup. But if I
okay,
have to talk about how passionate I am about the actors, probably Brendan is my number two in that sense.
yeah.
So it's like I have to put it into the balance. Okay, I'm okay with the win. I'm not mad about the win over Brendan Fraser being an Oscar winner. Yes, I'm mad at the fact for this performance, but that's totally different.
But
And I'm sorry, that's what the
but
Academy is. But
yeah,
yeah, I totally agree about Colin. It's like, why did it take him so long?
yeah.
but I think he got very challenging roles. I mean, he got this one, he got to kill him to Sacred Deer. So he back at that time, it was like Yorgos Lanthimos was somehow like an Oscar nominee, and he still is. Thankfully, next year he's gonna change that status to winner. But it's
We'll
like
see with Poor
we'll see
Things.
something. But it's like I do see him being challenging about the directors that he was working, and he continues working, even though that there's somehow like safe places because he worked several times with Martin McDonagh and that, and he got into it in style. But yet, what I'm surprised is not only the Oscar nomination, the fact that he never won a festival award till Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah. I think also too is that he's never been in a Best Picture nominated film before, right? Colin Farrell.
That I recall, no, he
Okay.
wasn't.
Because I wonder if that was also the push too,
Because
as
in
to like,
Martin McDonagh, it's like the only film that got an Oscar nomination for Best Picture was before this was Three Billboards, and he wasn't in there. So it's like,
yeah, I'm looking through his films right now real quick.
that
Uh,
I remember. No, he
yeah,
was.
Banshees is like the only the only film that was like contending for Best Picture.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a very very sweet generous somehow career because he's a very well known actor. Everybody knows who he is. Um, he has really good performances, yet he was never something this Academy Award friendly.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like
that's interesting.
this is the most Academy Award mainstream movie that you can get. Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but you know what? I if Colin Farrell wants to get that Oscar, he just needs to pull Rami Malek, Gary Oldman, King Richard, what was it? The Whale, where it just be in this like, transformative performance, heavy makeup. I mean, he did the heavy
Oh,
makeup with the Batman.
yeah, and he's
Um
doing it. Maybe he gets an Emmy for the miniseries. Who knows?
Maybe, but I feel like nowadays with lead actor and we'll pending this upcoming year, it might
With
be
our
a case.
dear boy, nine-time Academy Award loser, Bradley
We'll see.
Cooper.
Publicly I have to be optimistic, but yeah, that's all I'll say about that in terms of Cooper with Maestro. Yeah, so any final thoughts on the overall awards stuff with the Lobster, or anything else we left out before you sign off?
No, I think we're doing good. But actually, talking about Bradley, because you started the episode talking that coincidentally about the poor things and Colin Farrell being an Academy Award member, uh, we both talk a lot about Bradley Cooper, and yesterday was the fifth anniversary of A Star Is Born being released.
Yes.
So I think it's everything comes in full circle.
Yeah, that's yeah, I'll have to tell you more off air, because there was something I told Joey off air too, and I'll mention this to you about it, about the upcoming award season, which is, has nothing to do with this episode. But anyways,
Imminent.
yeah. So we'll put a pin in that for now. But as far as the episode, we're gonna be signing off right now. I want to say thank you, Valentina, for dedicating your time being here on the show. Before we sign off, is there anything you would like to plug in, or where our listeners can follow you after they're done listening to this episode?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. Well, actually, the artist formerly known as Twitter, now X, thanks to Elon Musk. And on Letterboxd, I'm Starcovich, related to WandaVision. So yeah, I'm always there talking about Bradley Cooper's Oscar losing campaign and everyone who loses an Oscar. But yeah, thank you very much for getting me here. I had such a great time talking to you about Colin, or actually about the film. But yeah, mostly Colin Farrell
Yeah, yeah, his dreamy eyes.
and his mustache.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as me, as always, you could follow me and the show through Linktree under at Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts, such as Twitter, which is what I'm still calling it, and Letterbox. On the same site, I've also provided a link for where you could listen to for more episodes for the show. If you're interested in being in the hot seat like Valentina has graciously been, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening in the future. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.